Yes, great question. So the question is, for myself as a writer, do I experience God in a sense partnering with, or do I sense something new coming as a creative as a result of spaces of quiet, spaces of silence, spaces of listening? And the answer to that question is absolutely. I find that for me as a writer, as I'm trying to communicate something, or as I'm trying to stitch together a metaphor, or stitch together a story, or stitch together imagery, that silence is essential to that creative process. Because I find that, at least in my mind and my experience in my writing life, I can oftentimes sort of get myself, get the RPMs going too much, kind of redlining, trying to bring too many things together, trying to hold together too much in a story. And what I think that simplicity, or that silence does, is it enables simplicity, it enables clarity, it enables a more focused approach. So absolutely, as a writer and as a creative, I believe that silence is fundamentally necessary. It's a necessary counterbalance to the energy that it takes to create something, to articulate something, to put it into words, images, stories, narration. So absolutely, I find as a writer and as a creative, silence, creating and cultivating specific periods of silence, of listening, of non-creativity, in fact, nourishes and enables and empowers the creative endeavor, very much so. So, and I find that works itself out in many different kinds of ways. One of the spiritual practices that I was intentionally engaging in the sacred year is the spiritual practice of wilderness, of going into the wild, of consistently putting myself in silence in places of wilderness. And there are many different ways to define wilderness, but I am sort of working with the definition of wilderness as any place which reminds us that we are fundamentally living in a non-only human world. So our world is not only human. Obviously, humans have had massive impact on the world and on God's creation, but the world is not just a human construction. And so I believe that wilderness is anything which reminds us that the world is not just a human construction. Now, attentiveness intersects in that. Of course, we begin to notice things, we begin to see things, we begin to attend to things. Wilderness can begin to open up in many different kinds of spaces. We begin to watch how animals are at work in the midst of our cities. It's not that we've gone out and found a silent place underneath of a tree, but it's that we're beginning to see that, wow, God's creation is much bigger than just human reality. So I find, for example, that time and intentional time away in silence, in wilderness, is fundamentally nourishing for the creative process, very much so.